Hey there! Are you interested in getting access to the recordings of my monthly masterclass hangouts, where we do deep dives into different travel hacking programs? If so, please check out the Patreon at patreon.com/geobreezetravel. Patreon members will also get to vote on the charity of the month, because in case you didn't already know, all of the Geobreeze travel income gets earmarked for donations to different nonprofits. That includes the income from the monthly hangouts, coaching services, and credit card affiliate signups. Links to all of those are available in the show notes. This week's Patreon shoutout goes out to Eliza. Thank you so much for being a part of the Geobreeze Travel Patreon community. Welcome to the Geobreeze Travel Podcast, a show for anyone wanting to level up their travel hacking lifestyle. I'm your host, Julia Menez. I'm a travel hacker, coach, speaker, Filipino-American ENTJ who loves solid travel gear and using shortcuts on spreadsheets. On this show, I'm on a mission to bring you travel hackers from all walks of life to help you level up your travel hacking game. We dive into credit cards, miles, points, strategy, mindset, and the secrets behind how to travel the world for next to no cost. So, let's get hacking.
Always put on my CV highlights of what countries I've worked with, what types of development teams I've worked with. So if you are interested in living an international lifestyle with your job, you need to figure out how to volunteer, how to create side projects, side hustles that will give you those international skills and backgrounds. My Wander Onwards platform has literally gotten me jobs, like full-time corporate jobs, because they're so impressed with all the extra effort I put in after work hours are done, and they can see that I'm a passionate, capable person.
Hello, travel hackers. You just heard a clip from Vanessa M.W. of Wander Onwards. Vanessa is a travel tech professional and creator of the wealth and wanderlust platform Wander Onwards. Vanessa is originally from Los Angeles, California. She is a proud Chicana, and she has been living abroad for the last 7 years. In today's episode, Vanessa and I discuss how to become an expat, and we get into some travel hacks that go beyond points and miles. We talk about how to qualify for international career assignments that pay for you to travel the world, how to get your foot in the door with side hustles, international tax strategies 101, and some crazy stories from her time abroad, like when she suddenly became an illegal immigrant in China. Learning how to travel the world can be overwhelming, even if you're doing it for free with points and miles. I offer free 30-minute travel hacking coaching calls to help you get started in the right direction. There are a limited number of spots each month, and they fill up fast. So grab yours today at geobreezetravel.com/calendly, which you can find in the show notes. Now, on with the show. Hey, Vanessa, welcome to the Geobreeze Travel Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Julia. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here today. You're calling in from Germany, which is so exciting too. And I am just so excited to hear about expat life and how you were able to make this work, how you're able to incorporate travel hacks with your expat lifestyle. But before we jump into all of that, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into the game of travel hacking, how you became an expat. Tell us your story.
Yeah, thanks. So my name's Vanessa M.W. It's because my last name is super long and with multiple names, and I am a wealth and wanderlust coach. So what that means is I help people pursue location and financial independence through my Move Abroad masterclass and my financial literacy digital products. I originally moved abroad in 2013 after I graduated from college. I was supposed to go to law school. I decided to quit that, dump my boyfriend, pack 2 suitcases, and move to Beijing completely by myself and without knowing Chinese or ever going to China in the past. And now, 8 years later, I'm still abroad. I'm still living my best life, learning different languages, eating different food. I tricked a wonderful German man into marrying me. And so now we're based in Germany after living in China, the UK, Turkey for a little bit, and doing some long-term travel.
You live together in all of those countries?
In China, I unofficially lived with him. I just basically slept over once and never left. And then in the UK, we lived together, and now we got married in the UK and we're living in Germany together.
That's so cool. How did you meet? Was he an expat too, or he was like, I too have just broken up with my girlfriend, cut my hair, moved across the country to China. What's that story?
So he moved to China to learn Chinese. Like he was there for 6 years. He speaks great Chinese and he's like this blonde hair, blue eyed, 6'8" German man. Yeah, totally random. I met him at a beer pong tournament in Beijing when I was supposed to be on a date with another guy. And of course, I went to school on the East Coast. So I was talking hella shit and I challenged him to a game, got his phone number, and basically moved in with him after a week of knowing him. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. That's awesome. How did you know you wanted to move to China?
So I grew up in an all Chinese neighborhood called San Gabriel. Shout out to the 626. And so when I went to Boston College, it was such a culture shock to be surrounded with predominantly white students, white culture, all that jazz. And I thought, you know what? I feel way more comfortable in a Chinese immigrant setting. I'm from Los Angeles. Let's go have an adventure over there because when else am I going to be confident enough to take this like crazy chance on a dream that I've always had? So I just pointed at a map and I was like, yep, we're going there.
That's awesome. What was the money plan when you were like, I'm going to pick up and move to China? Did you have a job lined up?
Yeah, so I actually started teaching English when I first moved to China. I applied for a formal program in the United States. They paid for my flight over there. They gave me an apartment and they gave me a stipend or salary of 10,000 renminbi a month, which was basically like 1,500 US dollars a month. And then while I was there, I was also able to freelance and teach English to like rich kids in Beijing. I got paid like $50 an hour to play video games with a 16-year-old boy for 2 hours. And I used that money to just travel all over Asia, all over the world, really. I've been to over 50 countries and I will never regret it.
That's incredible. Were you already travel hacking at this point too? Were you incorporating credit card points and miles along with the really cool travel hack of just getting paid to teach English and play video games with teenagers across the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I moved to Boston from Los Angeles, I started travel hacking before I really knew what that meant. I got a JetBlue credit card. I paid for the or the back and forth tickets from LA to Boston. And that's actually a triple point flight. And then I paid with my card. So I got like quadruple points for some reason. So by the time I was a senior, 4 years later, I had 250,000 JetBlue airline miles. And I backpacked America visiting my friends and ex-lovers all over the country before I left.
Nice. And when you were first getting into the game, were there any travel hacking mistakes that you made where you were like, hey, audience, today, don't make any of these mistakes that I made way back in the day?
Yeah, the big one is probably the most common one, which was I was spending money I didn't have to hopefully travel in the future with nothing like concrete and planned yet. I fortunately travel so much that I knew, okay, at some point I'm going to be on a plane. Let's rack these points up. But I definitely didn't have like the personal finance knowledge or the self-restraint to maybe focus on a budget first and then do what I can to pay my necessary bills on a credit card.
So you went into debt to get these
Oh,
points.
so much debt, girl.
Oh
Well,
gosh.
in college, I had less debt because my expenses were lower. But when I left China, I was just spending so much money. I used the JetBlue card to fund trips that I didn't need to take that were beyond my cash flow, partly for visa issues, but also because I got ill when I was in Asia. I got salmonella for 3 months. So
3 months.
3 months, girl, just in and out of the hospital, paying for bills on that JetBlue credit card. But it provided the safety net that I needed. It gave me the opportunity to fly back home when I needed to. And I am forever grateful that I dug myself out of $10,000 worth of credit card debt by 2016.
That is a lot of debt, but yeah, I'm so proud of you for being able to pay that off. That's awesome. You're debt free.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, not student loan debt, girl. I started with $110,000 worth of debt in 2016. That's including the 10,000 from my JetBlue card. I am now down to $60,000 worth of debt. And my first job out of my master's degree in London only paid me like 29,000 US dollars a year at almost 40% tax. So there was some serious hustling going on. And as I increased my salary, I was able to decrease my debt more substantially. And I took all the jobs. I took anything that anyone would pay me to do. That was within reason.
So, okay, let me get the timeline straight. You went from Los Angeles to Boston, then China, then got your master's in London, and then got paid sub $30,000 before tax.
Before tax, yes.
So
So
took
that
approximately
was,
half of it.
yes, exactly. I mean, that's the price you pay when you live in a national healthcare system. I was happy to pay for that. I paid like $200 per year as a student in the UK for my health insurance. The credit card debt got out of control after college. So when I was in college, travel hacking, traveling back and forth, doing my tour to say goodbye, that was manageable. And I kept up with my payments and I was travel hacking, living my best life. It's when I left the United States, got sick, started living a life I couldn't afford. That's when it got me in trouble, but it did get me extra points.
Were you just using one credit card this whole time, or were you opening more credit cards in order to get more of the sign up bonus flight points too?
Fortunately, because I was in China and they couldn't send me a credit card because they couldn't like process the Chinese characters in their system, nobody would give me another credit card. So that was super lucky. I really appreciate it, universe. And that's how I kind of kept myself out of additional debt.
Yeah, because I'm sure that if you already don't have that personal finance foundation of here's how you use the credit cards responsibly, you have to pay it off every month, or else the interest completely negates the point value. If you don't already have that, and then you're seeing 100,000 point sign up bonus left and right, then you're opening credit cards left and right. And then the debt just exponentially gets worse and worse.
Yeah, I think this is a pitfall that we have to remind ourselves as travel hackers. But I've kind of opened up a new gateway to travel hacking that has nothing to do with credit cards. And then it's actually all about getting your work, your full-time job or your side hustle to pay for travel. And that's how I started using Wander Onwards. I currently work for a travel tech company that sends me all over Europe prior to COVID, of course, to go consult, to go meet with partners. So I tack on a couple days in France. I went to Hong Kong. My company paid for my flights, my hotel, my food, everything to go to Hong Kong. And that's what I'm focusing on moving forward.
That's amazing. And a lot of people have told me in the past, like, oh, well, you shouldn't really just say like travel hacking, it's just points and miles, because like travel hacking makes it sound like you're doing something bad. And I'm like, but I think at some point we're going to, on this show, talk about travel hacks that aren't purely credit cards. And this is a perfect example. So, okay, moving on with the timeline. You are now in England, getting paid nothing, taking on a whole bunch of side hustles. What's the next move from there? How did you get a job that then paid you to travel all over Europe? Or is there a lot more that happens in between those two pieces in the timeline?
Well, fortunately, not too many things. I started working and building websites on the side to pay for my debt. And during that process, I actually got a job as a project manager for a tech company, an education tech company. So they actually sent me all over Europe. I've had multiple jobs that sends me to different places, which is why I can talk about this with authority. They would send me to Europe to go run workshops about digital transformation. And that's how I would be on an international flight every 2 weeks almost. And they would pay for everything, food, flight, accommodation. And that's how I first got the taste of it. Then I moved into my now travel tech job where I work on API technology and operations. And so in the two different jobs I've had at this company, they would send me all around the world because I was an international project and product manager. That's really the key. If you want a career that will send you places, you have to be assigned to international projects.
So, without giving out too much of your course content, how does somebody do this? How do you get a job with one of these companies and say, like, I want to be on an international project so that I can fly back and forth with all of the different business travel perks? What do you put on your resume in order to get one of these jobs?
Well, you have to demonstrate that you have an international background first and foremost. Like, do you speak languages? Do you have a network abroad? Did you study abroad? Have you ever lived abroad at all? If you haven't, I have a Move Abroad masterclass that you are welcome to join, but we'll talk about that later. For me, I've lived in China, Turkey, United Kingdom, now Germany. So at the front of my CV, I put a customer focused and KPI driven product manager with an international background and the right to work in 3 different countries. And I list those countries. I always put on my CV highlights of what countries I've worked with and what types of development teams I've worked with. So if you are interested in living an international lifestyle with your job, you need to figure out how to volunteer, how to create side projects, side hustles that will give you those international skills and backgrounds. My Wander Onwards platform has literally gotten me jobs, like full-time corporate jobs, because they're so impressed with all the extra effort I put in after work hours are done. And they can see that I'm a passionate, like capable person.
That's right. And I think a lot of people are just like, how do I go from my normal 9 to 5 in the US to doing the same thing, but getting to travel around the whole world? And that's oftentimes not the path. Like you said, volunteering abroad, playing video games with Chinese teenagers and like teaching them English, going abroad to teach English in really any country, doing these types of things can get you a lot more of a foot in the door rather than saying, well, I'm an accountant in the US. Can I be an accountant in Germany? No, because
No.
the accounting laws are completely different.
Absolutely. And then you unlock expert level. So here's how I break down travel hacking. We have the basics, which everyone knows, like the credit cards, like this sort of environment. That's level 1. Level 2 is getting your job to pay for everything because you want to protect that cash flow. Level 3 is putting all of your corporate travel on your personal travel hacking credit card and then having your company pay that money back. So my current travel hacking credit card is the British Airways premium card. It's the black one. And for every $10,000 I spend, I get like 50,000 points or something like that. I was able to rack up so many points with the signing bonus, with spending. My husband got a card. I referred 3 other people that we were able to combine our points and pay for a business class flight to and from London to Mexico for our honeymoon. And then my blog actually got sponsored to bring us to Mexico, Cuba, all over Tulum, Mexico City, etc. So our honeymoon was essentially for free. All we had to do was pay for some food because a lot of it was sponsored. And then I even travel hacked a 5-star resort for 4 days in our own private villa with the 30,000 Expedia points that I had. So truly, you can move up in your travel hacking career if you start getting more creative.
Absolutely. Is level 4 somehow being able to take all of your side gig money and do tax hacks to just write off your corporate income debt so that you can pay less money on the tax side, get to travel for free, still protect your cash flow from your day job? How are you juggling all of these different things? Because I'm nerding out so hard right now.
Well, I'm doing just that. I'm going to Tenerife next week, and Wander Onwards is sponsoring it because it's a videography and photography shoot. I rented out my own penthouse apartment in the city center of northern Tenerife. All of that is part of my normal business transactions as a travel blogger, as a content creator. So I'm able to protect my full-time job income, save that for investing. Wander Onwards is going to sponsor this trip. I paid with my Wander Onwards card. So unfortunately, I don't have a credit card yet that has travel hacking, but TBD to that. But I overall get to protect my cash flow and just continue to build up and invest in Wander Onwards in a tax efficient way. I guess
That's
level
so
5
cool.
would be the travel hacking corporate credit card for Wander Onwards.
Yeah, so that you can reduce what it looks like as your total income, where you're like, I just expensed my whole life because I'm a content creator and I get to travel and I have the revenue to justify that. So that what's the European version of the IRS?
It's different in every country. We just call it the tax authority here in Germany.
Okay, so that the tax authority of Germany does not say like, these aren't, you can't just expense your life. And you're like, no, I really can because I have this brand that lets me do that. So that is next level travel hacking. That is the dream. So
Yeah, and it didn't happen overnight. I want to emphasize this to everyone. Like I've been working on this for 8 years. If you go on Wander Onwards and check out some of my janky ass blogs from like 2013, like you're going to see a huge transformation. It took me 7 years to become profitable. 7 years to become profitable on Wander Onwards. So if you're just starting out, don't rush it. It's a process.
what did you do for those 7 years? Was it just travel blogs where you're like, and then I went here and here's like the different money things that you can do within this country? And what is it like for those 7 years where you're like, no money has been made?
Yeah, I used my full-time job to bankroll Wander Onwards, basically. And I focused on getting product for promotion collaborations. So I said, okay, hi, hotel in Cuba that I've just spent the last 7 hours pitching a bunch of different hotels. Please allow me to stay there for free. I will blog about it here on my platforms. Here's the marketing proposal that I have. You don't have to pay me anything. I just want to stay there for free. That was my first mistake. I didn't believe anyone would think my brand was worth paying for. That is completely wrong. I have the receipts to prove it now. But at the time, I just didn't really know any better. I didn't have a community of business people, business women specifically. So it was tough. But that also meant that my bad habit traveling was now covered to some degree by my exchange of work for product. And so I got to save and put more of my disposable income into debt smashing.
Awesome. And for anybody who's listening, who's like, well, I don't have a portfolio that I can show hotels to do this. That's where a lot of these like regular travel hacks that we talk about on the show with the points and miles, you can get to stay at a nice hotel for free. And if you want to become a content creator or influencer, just take pictures of that trip that you took for free using points and miles. Use that to build up your portfolio. And then eventually, once you have a blog that's built up, you can use that to pitch other companies, whether it's hotels or tourism agencies or really anything. There's always a stepping stone that you can use.
Yeah. And definitely find your niche when it comes to joining the travel influencer space, because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of competition, but they're all the same blonde girl in the same red dress with a hat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. And she's like spinning, but you never see her face. And like the colors are just unrealistically highlighted. It's the same girl on all of these accounts. So with my media kit, I always like to highlight my community, what I offer, why I'm different. And that's what makes all the difference. It's not the fact that I have 100,000 followers, because I don't. It's the fact that I'm bringing such a articulated brand to the table.
That's awesome. And I love the diverse background that you come from too, because you're Latina, you grew up in the 626 of Los Angeles. How many languages do you speak also?
I speak 4 languages badly. My Chinese is bad now, but I studied it for a full year in China. My German is getting there. I have to speak German every single day. There's not a lot of English speakers where I am. I speak Spanish and I speak English.
That's awesome. So with all of these like different diverse backgrounds, I'm sure that really helps the brand too and helps you to connect with all of these different brands that you're pitching. Where you're like, hey, I can relate to so many different audiences.
Absolutely. My true dream is to be on The Amazing Race, where I need to go from one side of the world to the other. And I'm going to raise funds by going to the major tourist traps and using all those languages to ask if tourists want me to take their photos for tips. So I can already do it in 4 languages. I'm going to tack on French, and there's going to be nothing I can't do.
That's awesome. I once met a girl in Thailand who said she could sell t-shirts in 7 different languages, which I thought was really cool.
That's so cool. People are amazing.
Yeah. What were some of the other side gigs that you had in order to pay for all of your travel and everything before you got to do all of your product manager roles?
Girl, what did I not do? So let's focus on China first, because that's where I was the most poor. So halfway through my teaching experience, I decided I just didn't want to do that anymore. It was a great, comfortable gig. I was only asked to work like 15 hours a week, and they would pay for my housing and give me the 10,000 renminbi stipend. But I was like, I'm bored. I want to get into marketing here in China. Let me quit my job and try to figure it out. So when you quit your job in a foreign country, your visa gets canceled. while you're in the country. So I don't know if you know anything about Chinese jails, but they are not the Ritz-Carlton.
Were you in
um,
Chinese jail?
I was not in Chinese jail. I could have been because I was an illegal immigrant in China for a brief amount of time since I didn't know any better. I genuinely had no idea what a visa could do, the implications, none of it. So
Oh, damn.
I ended up enrolling in the Beijing business school. I got in, I studied Chinese there specifically, and I had to come with $3,000 worth of renminbi, which is 30,000 renminbi. In cash, they don't take international cards, and enrolling in that program so I could get a student visa. So now I'm down $3,000 and I have to make that up. So I start tutoring English. This is where I started tutoring with the kid that played video games. I worked at a expat spa in marketing. I did that full time. I only got 8,000 renminbi a month from that. So that's $1,250 from a full-time job per month. I did modeling. I put it in air quotes because if you are foreign looking, mixed race, anything in China other than a local Chinese person, there are modeling, hosting, a wide variety of gigs because people want to showcase diversity in China. I did that. I was paid $1,000 to dress up as a slutty Santa Claus and pass out pizza at corporate events during July.
Why?
I don't know. And at least my slutty Santa Claus helper outfit was somewhat covered. Like my boobs were out, my tummy was covered, and I was in the tiniest little skirt. This poor male from the UK, he was like super jacked. They gave him essentially boxer underpants with that were pink with white trimming on it. And they told him, go pass out pizza with these girls. And I did that for 3 days. I took pictures, I held my tongue, and they paid me $1,000 to do that.
That's incredible. That is the most interesting side gig I've heard of on this show. And I've heard of a lot of interesting side gigs on this show by now, but that's the best one so far.
Yeah, it was definitely not where I saw myself after graduating from a 4-year university. But when you need to eat, you'd be shocked what you do to survive. Once I made enough money to kind of like support myself again and like get my bills regulated, I started building websites. I taught myself how to code on YouTube. I used different websites to practice. And then I started pitching expats in the area to allow me to build their websites. And I would get paid like $3,000 a website, which was pretty good. Then I hired freelancers on Upwork. So they did the hard stuff for me. I used a website template and I could build a website in like 5 days.
For $3,000.
For $3,000, yeah.
That's awesome. Beats dressing up as slutty Santa and passing out pizza.
Yeah, I agree. But I just didn't know. I didn't know that I had these other options. I didn't know what a side hustle was. I think really, if you are curious and asking the right questions, you can find out so many different ways to make money that you never thought was possible.
That's really cool. And were you coordinating these different types of like cash inflow with your now husband, or had you not met yet at this point in time?
When I was really struggling, we had not met. It was once I finally leveled out and started doing the website development thing that we met. It was kind of like the universe knew I wasn't ready for love and like a serious relationship. It was like, Vanessa, you a mess. You're going to keep being a mess for a hot second. And once you're stable, we're going to give you what we think you deserve, which was this wonderful man. We did not combine incomes fully until we moved to the UK. And even in that scenario, and today, we still have our own separate bank accounts. We have our separate brokerages. We have a house fund that we add money to every month, but I prefer to keep my money separate because I like to track and I like to have that autonomy.
That sounds good. And now that you're in Germany, do you have points and miles programs that are available to you?
Ish. We have the Lufthansa credit card that has miles, but they're definitely not as generous as they are in America. Also, you have to verify your identity at the post office. Like you have to go in person during a global pandemic, sign some stuff, pay for that signature to be sent to Lufthansa. And then 8 weeks later, maybe you have a credit card. So I haven't really gotten into the travel hacking scene in Germany yet. I have my British credit card still, and I use that to this day.
Are you still able to qualify for points and miles credit cards in the US and in Germany then? So you can do both?
Yep, I could do both. I could do the UK as well because I'm a legal permanent resident there. So shout out to the UK.
Nice. Where would you get them all mailed? Would you just you would apply in the US for a credit card, have them mail it to you in Germany?
I'd probably send it to my mom because financial institutions hate when you have an international address. Like they will close your accounts, they will call the IRS. Do not give them any reason to suspect you're abroad unless you need an emergency credit card. And I've learned this the hard way.
What was the hard way? Did they close down some of your accounts?
Well, in the UK, I tried to send myself money to the US for my US brokerage, and RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland, don't bank there, shut my account down because they thought it was fraudulent activity that I was sending money to the US. And the only way to unlock my account was to go in person and sit there with my ID. Then she told me, oh, this ID isn't like enough. You need not only your passport, but you need your residence permit so we can prove that you're not an illegal alien with this bank account. Yeah, it was the most. So when you're moving money in and out internationally, when you're using different addresses, it's always good to keep it in your country of residence in order to not wave unnecessary flags because it's just your money. It's just your money. You're just doing different things and they don't like that.
That is good to know. These are problems I've never even had to contemplate yet because I've never lived abroad. But that's
if you were to live abroad, where would you go?
I think I would like living in Singapore, but also I like living in places with a free press. So I don't know.
No, you don't. No, I think not free press is highly underrated. Okay. I have never been safer in my life than when I was in China and Hong Kong. You could walk barefoot, drunk, blind, and nobody would bother you, touch you, any of that. And I've never felt that anywhere else. As an expat, you really don't have the same experiences as local people when it comes to the government acting a certain way because one, you're already on like a different level with your visa. You're a highly skilled migrant or something to that equivalent. So they tend to leave you alone. But also, people don't want to waste their time on expats when it comes to bothering them in the streets by the police. I would just pretend I don't speak Chinese and they'd be like, all right, just keep doing what you're doing then. So it is definitely a different dynamic. Just because a government is highly corrupt, let's not forget that, it doesn't mean that it'll impact your day-to-day life in the normal way because you're not a local.
That's true. We do have a lot of advantages being expats. I think it's more just like in the principle of the matter. I don't love not free press. When I studied abroad in China, I got so annoyed by censored internet where I'm like, just let me Google this. Come on, stop rerouting me. I know what the answer is supposed to be. Just give me the actual website. So I think a lot of like internet censorship would bother me if I were living abroad more so than, I think the general idea of not a free press bothers me.
I guess it depends on what your values are. So for my clients, I have them list out their values about where they see their perfect home abroad being, but I don't give them the option to do like a utopia. You can only choose X amount of values. They have to be in different boxes. So if you value free press, that means that you won't potentially have low taxes. And that's just something that you need to come to terms with. Like there's no right answer. It matters what you want for yourself right now. For me, free press is not very important because I already don't trust publication. During what was this, the stonks that was going up? GameStop, during the GameStop drama, they called my friend Rob a conspiracy theorist. Yeah, he's the guy on TikTok that explains, okay, this is what a put is. This is how ETFs work. They called him a conspiracy theorist on national television in the United States because he was explaining this is what is happening with GameStop. Don't do it. It's just a pump and dump. And so I just can't trust anything I read at this point.
No press in any country that you've lived in, even European ones?
Yeah, I don't trust them here either. So during the Brexit election, you were seeing horrible headlines about what immigrants are doing here in the country, myself included, that we could save 300 million per week in pounds for the NHS if we left the European Union. And that was all legally printed and promoted, which allowed Brexit to move forward. So I'm not saying that I don't read I don't read anymore. I'm just saying I, by default, distrust media in every country, and I rely on my own investigations. Not that I'm a Google scientist, but also the experts that are in the field. So Dr. Fauci, I love him, but there's plenty of press that is allowed to be pushed saying that he's a fraud or whatever. So I don't really trust anything anymore.
This is fascinating. This is absolutely fascinating. Just hearing this from somebody who's lived in so many different countries, where you're just like, and the press everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I think it actually was a little freeing because I no longer expect the highest quality of journalism. I just said, okay, this is one perspective. I know that there's another one out there. Let me make my due diligence and figure out my opinion or not. I don't need an opinion on everything. I'm not an expert in stem cell research and whether or not it's playing God or whatever. I'll leave that up to people I trust and know.
How have these different government regulations and viewpoints and just general structures of different countries, how do they affect personal finance viewpoints that you've seen?
Well, I wrote an article for Time on just this. Every country has their own personal finance, like do's, don'ts, and gurus. And they sometimes clash with one another, which I think is hysterical. So in Germany, the big thing is concrete gold. This is what they called housing and doing like a property flip or house hacking. And this is the standard for Germans. Only 12% of Germans have a brokerage account. Like they do not trust the stock market. If they do, it's by highly trained professionals only. No one DIYs it. And they won't even invest in like the main German index, like the S&P 500 equivalent. They will only invest in the global world index because they think that that is the only way to hedge all their bets in a DIY solution. In comparison, we have the UK, which has the ISA allowance of £20,000 a year. They have different incentives, or their pension program is essentially a pot of money that you keep paying into, and that money is then invested on your behalf. So a little bit similar to the United States structure. So you see that people have different anxieties and opinions about what their money should be doing for the long term and what's important to invest in.
That is so fascinating. And I can tell you are so knowledgeable about so many different countries and the personal finance views and how all of these different regulations work, while many of us in the United States are just like, how does it work in the United States?
Well, I have to figure it out the hard way because I'm always getting caught up in like tax problems because I have assets in the US, Germany, and the United Kingdom. So to protect myself, to speak intelligently to my army of accountants, I put it on myself to do my own research. And this is kind of why I don't mess with the news anymore. Like I have so much reading about tax in three different countries. I don't got time to discern between news outlets. Also, one more funny news story real quick about my time in China. So when the yellow umbrella, what is it called? Yellow umbrella revolution, there we go, started, I think in 2015. I was just leaving China by then. In domestic China, mainland China, there was an article going around by the main Chinese press with people in the main Hong Kong square, like an outdoor square, with people wearing red shirts and holding red umbrellas to celebrate the Chinese government and like the anniversary of some monumental event. This was being circulated in mainland. With my VPN, I could see that in Hong Kong, that green space was actually covered by people in yellow with yellow umbrellas protesting the government's autonomy or claim to autonomy in Hong Kong. And so I just held up the two articles to my Chinese friend and I was like, do you understand what's happening here? And they're like, oh, we've not seen the yellow umbrella article. I don't know why it's like that. I have no explanation for why they've been photoshopped or changed in that way. Let's talk about something else. And I was like, okay, let's talk about something else. It obviously made people feel uncomfortable, but it was like two spitting images right in front of me of how the press manipulation works.
Crazy. Oh,
yeah. But I would move back in a heartbeat. Like I loved China. China was fantastic.
It's like the Matrix. Everything you
It
said is
is.
just like the Matrix.
I kind of feel like America is the Matrix though sometimes. Like just reading the news. Okay, so I am currently on German and US TikTok. German TikTok are like young kids being like, haha, this is a Brötchen or a Stein. This is like German culture. There are some problems here too, obviously. But in America, it's like another person has been shot because of their race. Unemployment's at its highest, blah, blah. There's just such extreme news and stories in America that we just don't have here in Germany. So if you want a break from constant headlines, constant bad news, come on down to Germany. Our biggest problem here is the bakery runs out of bread sometimes.
That's a small problem.
A very small problem. Very small. Not to shit all over America. I am American. My family is in America. But if you are curious about what else there is out in the world, where you could potentially be happier, safer, more fulfilled, check out my Move Abroad Masterclass. It's in my Instagram. I talk about it all the time. It's well worth the investment if you want to move abroad.
That sounds so cool. And we've gone through so much today of all of the different money mindsets of different countries, tax hacks of different countries, how to get jobs so that you can get to move in these different countries and do these tax hacks. If you had to sum up everything into one line of advice for an Instagram quote card, what would your one line piece of advice be?
Oh God. Okay. Whatever you lack in money, you need to make up in hustle. And you owe it to yourself to find your place in the world. That would be my summary.
I love it. And we also like to do shout outs on this show. So if you could recommend one other travel hacker that other people should go check out on Instagram for great content, who would you like to recommend today?
I would love to recommend my friend Sania at fly.nance. We did a travel hacking workshop together, actually, that was fantastic. She is so knowledgeable. And I love the spin that she has on it, which is a Black woman pursuing financial independence, because we really need to talk about these things in the communities of color, because we weren't taught about any of this stuff when we were younger. So now's the time to learn.
Praise to that. All right. And I know you mentioned it a little bit, but where all can we find you on the internet?
So on all platforms, I'm at Wander, WANDER, onwards, one word. And my main platforms are Instagram and TikTok. I love doing little snippets about my life in Germany, my budget, my investing, the portfolio, and then of course, how to move abroad around the world. So if you're thinking about moving to Australia, you better hurry up, because their work holiday visa only allows people under 30 to apply for that. So step on it, people.
I'm 31. It's too late.
Oh, too old, but you can get like a traditional work visa. Don't worry.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa, for coming onto the show today. We have learned so much about being an expat. So thank you so much.
No problem. It was such a pleasure. And thank you so much, Julia, for all that you do on the platform. Like I'm constantly learning from your page.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Geobreeze Travel Podcast. If any of the cards mentioned in today's episode piqued your interest, please check out the links in the show notes for more information on any of the cards. Also, if you apply for a card using the links on that page, I may receive a commission too, so please and thank you. P.S. I hear the links work better in Internet Explorer or Safari, and sometimes the credit card applications tend to glitch out in Chrome. Additionally, it would mean the world to me if you could subscribe to this podcast, leave a 5-star review, and share it with a friend. And if you would like to make even more travel hacking friends, please sign up for the Patreon to access our monthly masterclass hangouts. We dive deep into a particular points program each month, and you'll get to ask all of your travel hacking questions and enjoy being around other people who enjoy points and miles just as much as you and I do. If you would like an invite to the next one, head over to geobreezetravel.com/hangouts to sign up to be on the invite list. Take care and happy travels!